Hello, this is Infosec Decoded, and today we have Pluton, but we're starting with Kaitlyn, who is going to kill all the cars.
Well, kind of. So Motorious.com has an article written by Stephen Symes talking about how Congress wants to add new features to cars rolling out. So this is nothing new. Congress recently has been pushing for things like breathalyzer tests in cars. And the car manufacturers have been rolling over themselves, like, how do we do this correctly? We want to make it so it's non-intrusive, but we also don't want passengers in the back seat, triggering the breathalyzer and stuff like that. Well, the other safety feature that Congress, our wonderful politicians, want to add to car is a kill switch, which will make it so that the police can turn off your car at any point for any reason whatsoever. I mean, and so, you understand that the logic behind this. There's police chase. People sometimes get hurt because people run away from the law in their car. Mm-hmm. And it would be nice if you could disable that car, on the fly.
Yeah.
The only problem is that, as usual, Congress kind of thinks that technology is sort of like magic. And just like they wanted a back door that only they could use, this is going to be the same thing all over again. Anyone, I assume, will be able to trigger these eventually.
Like a TV be gone.
Right. Like anytime you're just pissed off at the driver in front of you and you have the means, you can, in the future, perhaps remotely disable their car using, some RF trickery. So
this is awesome.
So this is amazingly awesome. This adds a new point for hackers to go in and take over cars and do mean things to drivers and turn off their engines in the middle of the freeway. This is going to be amazing.
I mean, I've heard about people who, like, when the Wi-Fi is too busy, they boot everybody else off in the cell phone network, and now you could just like clear out a path through the traffic.
Yeah. If traffic is bad, you just got to get people off the road, push a button. Everyone's car suddenly has engine problems.
So this is awesome.
Yes.
I can hardly wait.
I don't see why anyone has an issue with this. This is amazing.
Exactly. All right. And Alan has got a dream of power.
Yes. Well, it's been 1 year and a day since the insurrection or coup happened. Mm-hmm. And it's been an odd year. A lot's happened. A lot hasn't happened. And this is a piece from Timothy Snyder, a professor of history at Yale University. He specializes in 20th century European history with a focus on authoritarianism and fascism. And he's just written an essay analyzing what may happen in 2024 with a Trump victory, even if it is not, in fact, a majority Trump Democratic victory. I'll just quickly go through the 6 main points that he outlines for how the game, as he calls it, might be played. First, culture war and COVID spread keep the Democrats confused and the Republican base energized. 2, a Republican victory in the House or Senate or both in 2022 makes electoral reform impossible. 3, during the 2024 presidential election campaign, doubt about voting will favor the most ruthless. Preemptive claims of fraud prepare the ground for actual subversion. 4, in November 2024, the Democratic candidate wins by, say, a few million votes and by dozens of electoral votes. However, those 3 of those states, for example, that are won by the Democrat are controlled by Republicans, and then those authorities in those states begin investigations into fraud. This runs down the clock and prevents the electors from being nominated. And 5, if neither candidate wins a majority of electoral votes, the presidential election is thrown to the House of Representatives, which will then vote by state delegations, in which Republicans have a majority. and they opt for the Republican losing candidate. Finally, number 6, the Supreme Court may be asked to evaluate the situation, but will not alter what 6 of its members will regard as a legal outcome. Thereby, the person who has lost in both the popular vote and what should be the Electoral College vote then becomes president. So will these events come to pass? Well, of course, we don't really know, although I would suggest that points 1, 2, 3 are certainly underway, have already occurred. So we'll see what happens to points 4, 5, and 6.
Well, I don't think there's any grounds for all this gloominess. I think the solution is underway. We put in Joe Biden to save us from this, and he's succeeding by, in fact, not making it so that when the Republicans take over, it will freeze his agenda because it's frozen anyway, and by not winning, so Trump will just win and none of this will be necessary. So we did get
Yeah.
He'll save us from this fate.
Yeah, I suppose that there is a certain self-sacrificing, what to call it, a self-sacrificing selflessness in all this.
Yeah, there you go. We put in Joe hoping that this would all go away, and I think it's sort of coming true.
Yeah.
All right, but yes, we'll see.
You lose by losing.
You win by losing, like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Well, no, you're still losing because none of your platform gets passed, and the other side gets to install more judges and controls the legislature and so on and so forth. But
Well, I was just listening to another historian on Rachel Maddow, and she said, this all happened in the time of the Civil War. And we eventually ended up with Abraham Lincoln. I mean, that's what I thought when Trump got in the first place. I mean, eventually there's a backlash against this stuff. The question is how many decades we have to go through under fascism to get there. Anyway, and so in Singapore, they have robots everywhere. So it's a fun place. The Register had Lawrence Doberstein go to Singapore and see all the robots. And there's a lot more than I knew about, a lot more than you'll see here, doing all sorts of fun things. Children follow a robot through the museum, and they deliver, of course, food with robots, which are much bigger than the food delivery robots I've seen here. They're like rolling trash cans. These are like little cars. And they got the lawns are being mowed by little Roombas mowing the lawn out there. And they got solar panel cleaning robots, cleaning the windows on the buildings and just everywhere. They say this is the oncoming future. They got librarian robots scanning all the books on the shelves to find out which ones are misshelved and just all sorts of good stuff. So I think that's very interesting and what we're very likely to see here soon. So that's it. And of course, they say one thing to worry about is all the jobs that are being taken away. And I suppose you could worry about that. But anyway, I think we're going to have all these robots here soon. I think even a lot sooner now that everybody is unable to get any staff. So I think they'll be willing to pay a lot of money to get robots faster. And I think that's already underway in the United States. Anyway, then Kaitlyn has, yes, this one, the crypto scammers. I want to hear what you have to say about this one.
Yes, good news, everybody. CNBC is reporting by Mackenzie Sigalos that crypto scammers have took a record of $14 billion US dollars in 2021. So this is way, way up in terms of just crime. So we're talking about scammers and criminals taking Bitcoins away from other people and other cryptocurrencies, including Dogecoin and Zelle and stuff like that. And so losses from crypto-related crime is up about 80% from a year earlier. So, and this is the whole idea, is that this is decentralized finance. So there's not a whole lot the government can do to protect your stolen assets. Once criminals get to it, it's gone, and it's up 80%. So this is what you wanted. This is what the people are getting.
Get the government out of your money.
Get the government is out of your money. Thank God. Although I will say that cryptocurrency usage has gone up a lot as well. And so the crime we're seeing is sort of in relation to the rise of of popularity of cryptocurrency. It's starting to become mainstream. Those Bitcoin ATMs are not looking as ridiculous as they once were, though they still are kind of silly. But yeah, crime is still rampant with cryptocurrency, and it's something you need to keep in mind if you're thinking about getting into the cryptocurrency space.
Well, I was going to do this article if you didn't, but I of course have the opposite point. I mean, crime went up by 80%, and the use of cryptocurrency went up by a factor of 10. So the amount of crime is now 1/10 of 1% falling. So this is, like quoting how many million people died of COVID, but not talking about how many million people there are. It's
Right. Well, I
probably
mean,
much safer than it has ever been.
but you're kind of using a bias in the numbers. You're assuming that for every person that gains interest in cryptocurrency, there's going to be another scammer that's
the
gains
issue,
interest.
right? If you want to worry whether you are going to fall victim, what you care about is the amount of crime per capita or per dollar or something.
Maybe per dollar, and this doesn't go into per dollar because it doesn't say how much people are getting into.
No, they got it here per dollar. It's like 0.15%.
Oh, where is it?
Yeah, because the cryptocurrency transaction space is 15.8 trillion.
Oh, yes.
And so 8 billion is not even,
Right. So yeah, at least it so it is an all-time low in terms of at least it addresses representing.
Yeah. So the headline makes it sound like it's gone up, but as far as the actual risk to anybody involved, it's gone down.
I am not entirely sure that's the case. It's definitely attracting more scammers and more criminals.
Sure.
But the rate of adoption is faster. But like I said, you're not going to get that 1-to-1 ratio. And the people that have lost their cryptocurrency, are going to have a hard time getting it back because it's decentralized finance.
Well, that's certainly true. If you were using Visa or MasterCard, there would be refunds, but that's because you're paying a few percent on every transaction one way or another, which is a whole lot more. So anyway, it's interesting to see the numbers. Crypto is really taking off. It's not going back, but the crime is rising also, at least in absolute terms. Anyway, so Liz is here. Let's hear about this drone saving people with heart attacks.
Yeah, so this is actually a really cool story. A drone flew in a emergency defibrillator and managed to save a 70-year-old man who was having a heart attack while he was shoveling snow in Sweden. And seemed like a good confluence of events because there happened to be a doctor nearby to use the defibrillator on the patient, and it worked. The drone got the defibrillator there in 3 minutes, and guy got helped, which is crucial because you got to get help within 10 minutes. So pretty cool. Hope to see more of these in the future. Seems like a really good use for drones.
So somebody had to call 911 or something to make this happen, I guess.
Right. I would assume so. This article didn't mention the whole process, but yeah.
So we're not up to like RoboCop who flies over and decides you need help.
No, you got to call 911 and then the dispatchers send one out, but that's still pretty cool. I mean, it's kind of nice to see this kind of technology used to actually help people instead of to, surveil them or, heartlessly murder them from above.
Well, there's that, but I think the main use is to deliver coffee. Well, it's
right.
not. But all that's good. Yeah.
Well, that can be life-saving service too.
I know. I think it can. And so why don't you go to your next one about paper checks? This one surprised me.
So this one is very interesting to me. The article is entitled How Cyber Criminals Turn Paper Checks Stolen from Mailboxes into Bitcoin. And I thought, this is really interesting. It's drawn some connections for me because there's been a lot of problems with mail theft lately. And also to the point where even mail carriers are being assaulted or robbed and I thought, why would you rob a mail truck? Why would you rob a mail carrier? It's for their keys. Apparently I had a friend who used to be a mail carrier. They have the set of keys it's the master key, and if you lose it, you get fired instantly, and there's all kinds of sanctions. And it turns out this is why people are robbing mail carriers, because they
You mean
want to
those
get these
locks?
master keys.
I mean, those locks on the post office box are like real locks. I assumed they were like garbage, like paper towel dispenser locks.
Well, I mean, it seems like a little from column A, a little from column B there, but from what I've seen of the keys. But yes, excuse me, they are real locks. They also carry keys that not only unlock the blue mailboxes, but also keys that will unlock the whole, like say for a whole apartment complex. And so those are valuable. And I'm thinking, what can you do with the paper check? Why is it so, and people say, oh, well, it's because the stimulus checks are coming out. And I'm like, yeah, well, good luck. I mean, my bank is so strict on that stuff. I don't know how you could get away with cashing somebody else's check. But this article actually goes into describing it, and apparently it's still quite hot. These look for filled out checks in the mail, and this could be either a check that is coming to a recipient, or it could be, say, for example, you fill out a check that you send to your landlord. My ex-landlord required, the property management company required me to send in a paper check every month. So turns out the whole time I was doing that, it was a risk, because folks can intercept the check. And then one of the things they do is just sell the checks online, wholesale, as is. They can get, according to this article, $175 for personal checks or $250 for business checks that are payable in Bitcoin. However, another thing that they do with this is they use acetone, which you can get that in household products like nail polish remover, and use that to tamper with the check so that they can, for example, remove the payee on there and put in maybe themselves or a money mule, who will then go cash the check. Maybe even at a place like Walmart or a check cashing place using a fake ID. And then from then on, they get the money. They also use those checks to steal people's identities, because they will use all the info that's on the check to make a fake driver's license, and then use it to apply for loans or credit cards or whatever. So I didn't, this article is interesting. It's in a outlet called Tech Explorer, and it's written by David Maimon, and it filled in a lot of blanks for me. I had long wondered what they could do with these things, if anything, because it just seemed like such an anachronism to be stealing paper checks. It seems like there's so many controls that they'd render them useless, but apparently not. So this was an interesting read.
Yeah. So what you should do is put all your money in Dogecoin and pay your landlord with that, and the fraud rate will only be 0.15%. We just covered that. So
What
anyway,
could go wrong?
well, 0.15%, there's a chance that something could go wrong. Of course, they don't mention what the percentage is of your mail getting stolen, and I think it's very small. Anyway.
It depends on where you are. It largely depends on where you are.
Well, yes. And probably it's gone up like all other kinds of crime in the last couple of years in America.
There's a whole lot of it in my neighborhood.
You seem to live in high crime neighborhoods a lot.
I'm not, though, now. It's very interesting in that has now that and catalytic converter theft seem to be the biggest problems where I live now.
I've heard quite a bit of that one. Yeah. All right. And so Alan's got Norton 360 with crypto mining.
Speaking of insecurity and cryptocurrencies and getting stolen, what better way to secure your cryptocurrency than to just have your antivirus store it for you and mine it for you?
Why in the hell did they do this? I mean, I've been hearing about this for months, but what are they thinking?
One wonders, one really wonders. Maybe the company is just floundering so badly that they need to generate money any which way they can. It's not a competitive product anymore. It's no longer used in the enterprise space. I think it's even disappearing from the home user space. So I guess the end is nigh for Norton. If
Well,
they
for
are
most of us, right? Windows Defender is good enough for most people, right?
right, it's more than good enough at this point. It probably outperforms Norton.
So that's what I thought. I mean, my sister asked me about this and I said, well, Norton is pretty much trash anyway.
Yes, which is too bad because back in the day, it was quite the suite of security and utility programs. And Peter Norton was a bona fide star. But for those unfamiliar, what's going on here is that users of Norton's Norton, the antivirus product, Norton 360, they can opt in to a crypto mining feature in the Norton 360 software that will automatically use spare unused GPU cycles of your computer and hopefully eventually mine some Ethereum.
Oh, you
And
only,
when
it's
that
only if you opt
happens-
in?
Well, that's where it gets a little it's a little questionable. Apparently now on the Norton website it says it's opt-in, but earlier it said neither opt-in nor opt-out. It did not specify. So maybe it was opt-out earlier on.
Well, then it's
Yeah.
obvious because I'm sure that like 99% of customers have no idea what you're talking about and don't care and will never get the crypto. So the only thing it's going to do is donate the 15% of crypto to Norton, which is the point, making it pretty
Right.
much like malware that uses your machine
Yeah.
to basically.
Exactly. And so increasingly malware and antivirus or security products are indistinguishable.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, the other thing I saw is it only affects you if you have a powerful machine, but still.
Actually, the system requirements are minimal.
Oh,
It requires only 2 gigs of RAM, a 1 gigahertz processor. It does require a graphics card, a proper graphics card.
yeah. So it's going
So-
to increase your electricity bill is the main thing people will notice, right?
Yes, that's right. And so it's almost certainly a losing proposition for the user.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Norton does get its 15% cut no matter what. So Norton certainly comes out ahead.
Right. So they might as well have taken it all if they're going to do this stuff anyway.
Right. Yeah. And if people don't claim the Ethereum in their wallets, the wallets that have been created and provided by Norton, I'm assuming that just reverts to Norton's ownership.
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, it is pretty weird. I mean, I'm sure most of the customers don't even know it's there and would never notice it.
Right.
Yeah, it does seem pretty sleazy. All right. And so this one caught my attention. Somebody put up a website and then they went on Patreon to take donations. And then they allowed the Patreon to take donations in European currency like pounds. And the Court of Appeal in Europe said, if you take European currency, that means you are now serving European customers and the whole website is now subject to GDPR, which is pretty expensive. You know, a lot of American companies, rather than actually live up to the privacy regulations in Europe, just blocked Europe and quit serving European customers. And they say, if you take, and they had like 3 customers that paid in pounds. And they said, that's enough. You're not covered by GDPR. So that's an issue. This is, I think, a huge problem with like piracy and privacy laws around the world. If you're an international company, then how do you obey all the laws that contradict each other everywhere? The biggest issue, of course, being American companies that work in China. But there's many other places where if you work there, you're subject to all these different laws, and it's a problem for international business. Anyway, I thought that was pretty exciting. It reminds me of one about 10 years ago when the United States, some people in France legalized copying MP3s, and they copied it from French servers in France And the United States recording industry sued and said, because your DNS resolution passed through American DNS servers, that means it's technically under United States jurisdiction. And I don't know if they won that, but that's a pretty far-fetched and very similar argument. Anyway, all right. And so I think that brings us back to Liz with, oh, the apes. They stole his apes.
Yes, more crypto crime. So this story covers a gallery owner who got his NFT collection stolen.
Bored apes, no less, and those things are not cheap.
Yes, 15. He had an Ethereum wallet containing 15 NFTs that were worth a total of 2.2 million, and 4 of them were apes from the Bored Ape Yacht Club collection. And
that's the premier NFT collection, I think.
Apparently so. So this and people on the internet did not feel sorry for this person.
Well, they never do. They're heartless.
No, people indulged in a little bit of Schadenfreude there, but turns out that the marketplace that sells there's a big marketplace called OpenSea that sells these NFTs. The impression I get was that there's some sort of like a crypto exchange for NFTs. Somehow
making NFTs is homework now, I'll have you know, on OpenSea.
Nice. Somehow they managed to OpenSea managed to go after the stolen wallet and get some of the guys pieces back, which I'm really curious about that.
Well, they just freeze the account. You know, the FBI did the same thing when they got the money back from the people and hacked the oil pipeline. They managed to steal the Bitcoin. And the prevailing theory is that they passed through a Coinbase wallet. And then a lawsuit to Coinbase would see when it passes through your wallet, you seize it.
That's pretty interesting. It didn't say how much he got back and how much he lost, how many pieces, but apparently they managed to freeze all the apes. So those are probably some of the more expensive ones that he had in there, but it's just pretty wild.
Yeah, well, I mean, one aspect of this that a lot of people got excited about is that it means that it's not decentralized. There are choke points in the network right now where you can catch it.
Right.
But anyway, yeah.
And this guy mentioned that his lesson, his takeaway from this was to use a hardware wallet.
Yep, you should use a cold wallet for expensive stuff.
Yep.
Well, on we go. Of course, then you'll just have a physical theft of the cold wallet. But anyway,
or be like that British guy who threw it in a landfill and is still looking for it 10 years later.
Yep. And of course, 10 years later, its price has gone way up and you're more and more and more fear of missing out. And
you're less and less likely to ever find it again.
Yep. All right. But Kaitlyn has got the solution for disinformation. We could certainly use that.
Yeah. So I know a lot of you are very upset about disinformation from the government and from other governments. So the government is going to fix this by creating a disinformation agency. And this is what's already happened in Sweden. So Forbes has an article written by Emma Woolacott. Thank you, Emma, for your contributions to journalism. We appreciate it. And talks about how Sweden created this new agency. It's called the Swedish Psychological Defense Agency. And I think this is actually a great idea. Now, its purpose is mainly focused on external threats, right? So things that are not generated within Sweden. I see a lot of threats within the United States that I don't know how, if we were to set something like this up, how we would deal with it. But at least as far as outside influences affecting elections and stuff like that, this is great. And I'm honestly, I have no idea why like CISA and other cybersecurity agencies don't already have something like this going, because that is, we talk a lot about computer hacking, but there's another information processing device that is just as vulnerable to being manipulated, and that's, of course, our brains. And other countries are very interested in swinging our elections in their interests and not our interests. And so having research and defenses against psychological manipulation on things like social media, on things like news sites and stuff like that, could really be a benefit to our democracy. And as we've seen in the past few years, disinformation campaigns can lead to a lot of chaos within the political system. And if we want to maintain a strong democracy, people can't be subtly manipulated by foreign accounts pretending that they're, dissident groups in the United States, to build up fervor and anger towards the other side and stuff like that. So,
Well, the
anyway.
thing I didn't see here is, what did they do? Put a warning label on it, take down the site? I mean,
They don't, they do not go into specifics. That's of course going to be that's one of the things you have to research, right? Like, we don't know how to combat it directly.
yeah.
And it would be nice if we had people looking into it, doing research, figuring out ways to best combat psychological warfare, essentially. So,
Yeah, I think all we've got now is we got like Twitter and Facebook putting a note on it saying fact checkers don't agree with it, which probably has no effect at all.
I'm pretty sure the conspiracy theorists people really don't care that YouTube says that the Earth is actually round.
Yeah, it's a lot like the warning label on a pack of cigarettes.
Right.
That's why I think, and of course, I think the foreign influence is greatly overblown. I think it's very clear that 90% or 99% of the problem in America is genuine homegrown disinformation now.
It's homegrown information, but don't be fooled. That homegrown disinformation is being fermented by foreign powers. So there is a feedback loop going on.
Possibly, and that would
Absolutely.
be nice to actually see some research to prove how the studies I've seen showed that even though Russia, for example, published a lot of things about the election, they didn't really sway very many voters with them.
Maybe not, but like I said, they are fermenting the internal stuff that we see in the United States, right?
They definitely want to try and stir up dissent, but I'm not sure that. I think they're like a rock thrown in the Grand Canyon.
Right. Which gets to the sticky issue of what you do about disinformation not coming from foreign powers, but entirely internal, because there still would be misinformation. We've had it long before Facebook. We've had things like, left-wing news media outlets lying to people in the United States. And, how do we combat that? Right? How do we combat things like Fox News? How do we combat conspiracy theorists, which are nothing new in the United States. We've always had them, but it is still not good when you have people in your voting population going to school board meetings and demanding that we teach that vaccines don't work to kids. This is not a functional democracy situation. So.
This is a huge problem. If you're going to have a democracy and you're going to have free speech, then trying to shut up your own citizens who want to say something you don't like becomes very difficult.
Well, you can't shut them up, but you need to figure out the best way to keep them educated and keep conspiracy theories and misinformation at a minimum. There will always be some amount of misinformation. There's always going to be some people out there that are just not neurotypical. That's awesome. But the thing is that there's a lot of systems in place currently to encourage that, right? So instead of, for example, and we talked a lot about like Facebook and YouTube putting up warnings on videos and stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is that they get money for clicks, and they get money when eyes get, glued to things like conspiracy theory videos, right?
Yeah, well, the number one podcast in the world is Joe Rogan, and it appears to be all crap.
Yep,
it's popular.
Yep. And so there is money and incentives in keeping people in fermenting conspiracy theories and fermenting psychological biases that certain people have to gravitate towards towards misinformation. So
Yeah. All right. And Alan has got the clocks on the Hondas.
Yes, many Hondas and Acuras produced between approximately 2002 and 2012 now have clocks that don't display the right time. And in fact, not only do they not display the time correctly when set to auto adjust, but even if you manually correct the time, input the time, that correction does not persist when you turn off the car and then restart it. So it's a bit of a problem, and it's not entirely clear why this is the case. Apparently, Honda owners have appealed directly to the company in various forums and emailed them directly, and have gotten a range of different responses from different PR reps. What it comes down to is there may not be a solution to this until sometime in August of this year, when the clocks will automatically fix themselves. So some savvy person did some digging and discovered that on the navigation system's diagnostic menu, the GPS date was set to May 19, 2002, or exactly 1,024 weeks in the past, which is a magic number in binary. And so the speculation is that GPS, the global positioning system, has epochs, and these epochs started on January 6th of 1980. And then the second epoch happened on August 21st, 1999. And the third April 6, 2019. And what's magic about all these different days is each is at an interval of 1,024 weeks. And so that's exactly the situation that the Acuras and Hondas have run into now, is that there must be some kind of programming error that makes it such that we've rolled over to just past 1,024 weeks. And so
somebody took that last 10 bits and just added it to a constant.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I guess something is going to happen in August when that's going to self-correct. But anyway, don't get a Honda that's older than 2012 and expect the time to work.
Yep. This is well, if there was a kill switch in the car, that would help.
Kill switch, exactly what we need.
But my landlord's Subaru is the same. Every time daylight saving time comes in, you have to go to the dealer because nobody else on earth can figure out how to fix the clock, and it doesn't happen automatically. And his son and I spent like hours in there. There's like all these settings menus. There's 3 places to set the clock, but none of them work. There's some hidden one you can't find, which is the only way to do it.
Well, Subaru and Toyota are somewhat closely linked, so maybe they share the same bad programmers.
Well, I think all of tech has this usability issue where you spend your life hunting for stuff and the next version comes out and it's all hidden and broken again.
It's so true, yes.
So yeah, I've seen this exact same epoch bug in not just car software, but software. It's pretty common that developers don't realize that there's the GPS only keeps the week in a 1,000 up to 1,024, and then you have to sort of roll over yourself. And yeah.
Well, it seems like if you put that in an airplane or a cruise missile, it could be more than just an inconvenience.
It sets the dates incorrectly. You're still going to get accurate time and location data, but the date is going to be way off. And it's so easy to correct, or at least in theory, especially if you have like an internal backup clock. Like the thing about GPS is that it's an atomic clock, and so we use it all over the place for just keeping track of time. That's how your cell phone gets its time. That's how your cars, as we started, get their time. But the thing is that if you have a backup CMOS based clock, like a standard computer clock that you can just, have there, you can completely mitigate these issues with like the 1024 week, countdown with the GPS. But, just a lot of things are just poorly programmed. That's the gist of it. So.
All right. And so then I've got this one, which I thought was very interesting from Microsoft. Apparently, Microsoft's trusted platform module is not that secure at all. There've been a bunch of new hacks where people just reach in with a probe and they catch the secret key as it moves from this GPS from one chip to another. And so sort of versions of the cold boot attack and other ones like that, if you gain physical access to the device, it was not designed to resist that. So they have made a Microsoft designed chip called Pluton that basically takes the TPM and puts it inside the CPU on the same die. So it never passes through an external wire. And this is intended to resist physical attack. Although the physical attack that Joe Grant did a few years ago, where he would dissolve the chip with acid and reach in and hit the internal wires, I think they might still be vulnerable to that. But anyway, this thing is called Pluton and it's getting built into a whole lot of devices now. And they said it makes it more secure because it uses a unique secure hardware cryptography key called a SHAC. So anyway, this is supposedly the next step forward. The previous attempts to have a trusted key, trusted platform module in various computing devices has been shown to be a lot less secure than people thought. So this new one, Pluton, is supposed to be better. And I guess we'll have another generation of attacks against these things pretty soon. And then I think Liz has got, oh yeah, the IRS at PayPal.
Yeah, so just a PSA out there to anybody who hasn't heard this already. One of the many things buried in the infrastructure bill was a stipulation that now third-party payment processors have to report any transaction over $600. They tried to pass this through to get banks to report any transaction over $600, which is the threshold for 1099 reporting, but that didn't happen. So they're starting with this, and we can probably expect the bank one to happen later. There wasn't much discussion about the time around the time that this was included. It just kind of came up after the fact, and they're also concurrently hiring another army of people at the IRS to enforce this and make sure that everyone's paying every little bit. And it's kind of unfortunate because, the message we've gotten is that we're going to make the corporations and the super rich pay their fair share, but in practice, it's not going that route. We're going the same route we have been going, which is to devote more resources to chasing every dollar out of low and middle income wage earners, because statistically they are the least likely to be able to fight the IRS, and so they are going to be the easiest to collect from. So essentially we're continuing to go after any kind of low-hanging fruit, and this is actually quite problematic because say, for example, you inherit a set of silverware from your grandmother. You maybe, like many millennials now, don't really want to have a set of fancy silverware and fancy china for guests and a set of regular silverware and regular china for every day, because that's just ludicrous. So you decide you're going to sell your grandmother's silverware set. Well, burden of proof's going to be on you to make sure that you're able to show that you inherited this and did not buy it and resell it as a profit, because otherwise you will be liable for the capital gains on that sale. So good to pay attention to. Sort of discouraging on a political level.
Yeah. All right. And Alan, has COVID not being mild?
Right. For all this talk about Omicron being mild and it's not that bad, and oh, you don't really have to worry about it, it'll just give you cold or flu-like symptoms. The US has seen the greatest number of infections, over 1 million as of a few days ago, and is now seeing the highest level of hospitalizations ever, or is about to.
Over a million a day, right?
Over a million diagnoses a day.
Yeah.
Positives. That's right. And of course, that's only with the official diagnostics. That excludes all of the lateral flow tests that people are taking at home and that almost certainly are not getting reported to local health departments. So it's 1 million official cases. It's probably 3 times that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, part of the problem seems to be in this widespread perception that it's not that bad, that it's mild. It's this term mild that keeps getting used again and again in the media in particular. You see this in so many headlines from reputable sources. And while it is true that Omicron does tend to lead to less severe outcomes compared to Delta, it's still just as bad, if not worse, than Alpha, which itself was worse than the wild type, the original strain that was first identified. So Omicron, while it's not the worst of the worst, it's still plenty bad. And it's gotten to the point where Dr. Tedros, the head of the WHO, has made a very public statement that people should stop using the word mild.
Yeah.
And while it's probably too late to change public perception, it does kind of reflect the unfortunate state of affairs that you have to have the head of the WHO reprimand global media for using misleading terminology or misleading terms for describing the state of the pandemic when it's very clearly not having a mild effect on healthcare and many people's lives and ultimately the economies of the world.
Yeah. All right. Well, the best thing is get vaccinated. And then I think it is likely not to affect you much.
Well, vaccinated and good respiratory protection in the form of an N95, at least for those who are able to acquire one.
Yep, that too. All right. And
Speaking of which, I read an article stating that it really matters what kind of mask that you wear, and that a lot of the cloth masks are not as good as the N95 masks.
mhm. Yep. Alan, oh, you're just trying to get us canceled again.
Yes.
I can tell that. Every time you have to push it, some people just make trouble. Well,
Kaitlyn, I've heard some really interesting results, some study results concerning ivermectin. Could you talk about that, please?
Oh, yeah. So it turns out that ivermectin, it can cure COVID without getting any vaccine whatsoever. You do not need to get a vaccine. Just get ivermectin and your COVID will go away.
there we go. So that'll protect us.
Yes.
It'll protect our podcast from getting canceled anyway. So
Yes, now our podcast won't get taken down because I just told a complete lie right there.
well, I always like to end on a truly uplifting story. So this is awesome. This woman from Connecticut apparently went to Britain and became a reality TV star in something called 90 Day Fiance, whatever the hell that is. And then
90 Day Fiance is the greatest show that ever showed on television, Sam.
it could very well be, and I would still know nothing whatever about it.
Okay,
And-
so I'll explain to the audience what 90 Day Fiance is because it's such a great show. Oh my gosh. So these couples, one person comes from a foreign country and the other person is like living in the United States, and they have like 90 days to like get to know each other, and then get married so that the foreign person can, get their visa and become a legit person in the United States. And it's just the process of them learning to love each other and become, it's their process of getting to know each other. It's a great reality show.
Well, she became famous. She got up to 140,000 followers or 260,000 followers. So then she started selling her farts in a jar, up to hundreds of them, 50 jars a week, and selling them for like a lot of money.
$1,000 a piece for a fart in a
$1,000
jar.
where she's making up to like $50,000 a week from selling her farts in a jar. But
Yes.
then she tried drinking 3 protein shakes and a whole bowl of bean soup to create more farts, and managed to create such a gas problem in her intestine that she ended up in the emergency room. So now she says this has ruined her livelihood, but she has saved her business. And now she sells NFTs of the farts. So there you go, a happy story and an inspiring model of business for all of us. I mean, we've got 100 people watching this podcast. So if we could multiply that by 1,000, we could imitate this sort of thing.
Right. Instead of putting out a podcast, we just put out NFTs of the podcast.
Yes.
Are the NFTs the audio of the farts?
It is not clear what they are, but whatever they are, apparently you can buy them, and probably on OpenSea, you can buy one and find out.
Yes.
I'm so confused by so many things in this story.
Well, I was confused about what that show was.
90 Day Fiance. It's like I said, it's one of the greatest TV shows ever made. I mean, the funny thing is, like, you can totally tell that the people, just the 90 Day Fiancés, just want their visa papers or whatever, and they're just like putting up with this dorky American who like then thinks like, he or she really loves me, and the other person's like, I want my papers.
Well, this American is an inspiring example of entrepreneurship and innovation.
Yes. This is why we need, why a lot of people worry about immigrants coming over. Like, this is how our society progresses, right? Where would we be without people like this coming over and opening up entire new industries of selling farts?
Exactly. All right. Well, that's it for this one, and we'll be back on Tuesday.